So, first of all, I love the retro-futuristic style of the technology in this game, and the quiet, peaceful suburban utopia in which it starts. However brief it may be, because yes, as the name of the game suggests, this utopia doesn't last long. During the intro you get to shape your character. You can choose male or female and do the usual modifications, hairstyle, skin type, that sort of thing. Whichever you choose, the game will progress in the same way. You'll be forced to flee to Vault 111, making it there just as the nuke hits. Now, I think including this intro was a great decision, as it brings the harshness and dissolution of the post-nuclear war era into a much sharper relief. Your character then wakes over 200 years later and steps out into the devastation of the post-nuclear war. Soon after this, you'll meet up with your first companion, Dogmeat. Companions are useful in the game and can make up for any discrepancies you might have in your character build. Some are good for tanking damage and distracting the enemy, others for firepower, and others can even hack terminals and pick locked doors. You can also outfit your companion with new weapons and armour, but you need to remember that their natural affinity for their default weapon style won't be changed, and you'll find that some companions will use certain weapons a lot better than others. So don't be surprised if you change their weapon and they empty whole clips into the air without actually hitting anything. If the character's default weapon uses ammo, then that ammo will be unlimited, but if you give them another weapon, then you'll have to supply the ammo for it, or when they run out they'll just switch straight back to their default one. After the short battle in the museum, you'll meet up with Preston of the Minutemen, who represents the first of 4 possible factions you can join throughout the game. Early on in the game, you can join and advance all the faction questlines, but as you continue, you'll eventually be forced to choose between them, as certain factions will war with other factions. Unfortunately, it's after the museum quest that the game slows down, with a significant level gap you'll need to clear in order to continue with the main questline. There's 2 ways you can clear this gap, by side questing or by building settlements. By helping Preston in the museum, you unlock the settlement workshop area in Sanctuary Hills, which allows you to edit and modify the area. In doing so, you'll need to be aware of the needs of the residents and lay out certain life necessities such as water, food and a dry bed to sleep in. I managed to build my way up to about level 5, but it's a slow way to level and you'll eventually run out of materials with which to enhance your settlement and be forced to go a-questing. Unfortunately, despite the faction system, side quests pretty much come in only one flavour. Go to a certain place, kill all the enemies in a certain place, return to quest giver and rinse and repeat. This became tiring for me quite quickly, and drained all the fun out of the game as I was forced to grind to the required levels to continue the main questline. I think this is unfortunate and a real mistake in the game's overall design, as the storyline isn't the strongest element in this game and had barely started when it was cut off. A bit later in the game, and I may have been immersed in the world and story enough to swallow the forced side questing, but up to that point all the characters I'd encountered were two-dimensional and their plights failed to move me. It's a real shame because later in the game, with more faction quests to choose from, the side questing does have much more value, but at the beginning it just strikes me as slow and repetitive. That being said, there is the occasional gem, when you get to set a rocket engine off right over one of your companion's head, which was in no way one of my favourite parts of the game. Graphics wise, the game walks a fairly undulating line. Textures are quite low res in the context of current generation consoles, and the character models range from acceptable to uncanny valley. But when you leave the confines of the city and see the beauty of the ruined motorways stretching across the landscape and the broken tarmacs of the roads with rusted vehicles, partially reclaimed by the undergrowth, you can find some forgiveness for the low resolution textures and occasional bad character model. The weather atmospherics are also quite impressive, particularly if you get caught out in a nuclear storm. It might be pretty to witness, but just make sure you have the Radaway on hand, or you'll find your health bar turning red if you stand and gulp too long. The talent specialisation system in this game is simple, but I think effective. You're given a number of points during the intro, which you can distribute between 7 stats. After that, each time you level, you can either add another point to your stats or activate an ability. Certain abilities will require a certain number of points in its aligned stat in order to be unlocked. For example, to pick locks you'll need points in perception, and to hack effectively you'll need points in intelligence. Your chosen build can also affect the type of things that you can craft, as only the basic level of armour and weapon mods can be crafted by default, which requires even more thought as to how you're going to distribute your points and abilities. Overall, Fallout 4 is a solid game. There's room for improvement in a few areas and it is slow to get started, but the sheer scale of the game and the amount of content available most definitely makes it good value for money. If you're bored of having a social life and want to devote a crazy amount of time to playing a game, then this game will certainly keep you busy. Whether you choose to rebuild the Commonwealth or just clear out of miscreants, the choice is yours.